Confined Space Rescue Awareness. This is a follow-up from the Confined Space entry. Hope this never happens, but you need to know about rescue. An overview of Confined Space Rescue is what this is all about. Course objectives. I'm going to tell you why confined spaces can be dangerous. Review the 3 rescue techniques we talked about in the previous video: non-entry, entry by others, and entry by trained employees. Review the PPE, personal protective equipment. We'll take a look at response time and the importance of response time. Become familiar with rescue equipment. Review the importance of lockout, tagout, and the removal of potential hazards. Review key points of the Confined Space Rescue Plan. This material was produced under a grant by the Occupational Safety and Health Administration by Ozarks Technical College. Therefore, it's available for training. As said before, you have a right to a safe workplace. Law requires employers to provide their employees with working conditions that are free of known dangers. The Act created the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, which we hear about all the time. And you have the right to file a complaint with OSHA. Although you might not be covered under OSHA, it depends on how many employees the city or the district has that you work for. However, if there's ever an issue, OSHA will probably more than likely investigate it. Your entitled working conditions do not pose a risk of serious harm. That's why they need to provide all the safety equipment so you can work safely. This presentation is not designed to certify or train you in confined space rescue. That takes special training, and your company might want you to do that. You might want to do that if that's in your mindset. This is just designed as awareness training. If you're interested in confined space rescue, contact your local fire department or your local rescue. I'm sure they're always looking for someone that's interested in confined space rescue. City of Anderson, South Carolina Fire Department made this awesome awareness statement. The difference between a hero and a fool is training. Let's review for a moment the things that we've looked at before. Confined space things. On the right's the one that you will typically be involved in. The filters on the left you probably won't be, but you never know. Are confined spaces dangerous? Yes. And we talked about this a little bit in the previous video. Canada said that many workers are injured and killed each year while working in confined spaces. 60% of its fatalities have been among the would-be rescuers. That's the person jumping down in there to save you when they don't know what the conditions are, and it takes their life also. We don't want that to happen, and I'm sure you don't want that to happen either. Emergency rescue teams must be available while authorized entrants are in a confined space. Deaths often occur during rescue. Employees attempt to rescue another one without the training, get themselves caught in a confined space. We talked about 3 types earlier. I'm going to reiterate those. Non-entry, entry by others, and entry by trained employees from the company. Non-entry, just like the previous one. Got a tripod here. Should be lowered into and taken out with a tripod. Don't just climb down in there. Hook up to the tripod and be in or down in there the correct way. That way you know everything works. Don't just bail off in there. Entry by others. That's just fire department or local rescue. And the others, like we mentioned before, should be familiar with all of your confined spaces that they might have to enter. Let them train on it. Train by employees of your company. Not only do they have to be trained in confined space work, they must have one certified in CPR and first aid. If a rescue is required, rescue service must close off the area, get authorized entrance out of the space, and perform first aid when needed. And they need to get unauthorized people out of the area also. Like if you're in a crowded area, you might need to get police to cordon off the area so that you can keep well-wishers and well-lookers out of the way. The rescue teams do not need a distraction of onlookers. It's best to use a retrieval system, bring the employee out of the space, never enter space without proper training unless it is necessary. And it's not necessary. You always need proper training to enter a confined space. Authorized entrance should wear harnesses connected to the retrieval line. The retrieval equipment must be placed before employees enter the permit space. PPE. Talk about respirator again. It must be test fitted prior to use. You should have your own respirator and not share respirators. It must be cleaned, disinfected, and make sure that it properly works. Other forms of PPE, hard hats, safety glasses, and such. Take a look at response time. Different parts of the response time is reaction time, contact time, response time, assessment time, preparation time, and rescue time. The whole reasoning behind confined space entry and the safety surrounding it and entering it is to show that because the response time takes so long, that if someone has to respond to a rescue, that your life will more likely be lost, because the reaction, contact, response, assessment, preparation, rescue, it'll become a retrieval instead of a rescue. So therefore, make sure everything is right to start with before you ever go down in that hole. I mean, you don't have to worry about response time. Reaction time, that's the time between the entrant having a problem requiring rescue and the safety attendant's recognition that the entrant has a problem. And then the attendant has to call someone for the rescue team, and in time takes the rescuers to arrive to the scene of a rescue after contact. And many times this can be, if they're volunteers, this could be many minutes for the response time. And then once they get there, they have to have assessment time where they size the problem up and figure out how to do it in their safe manner. And then in preparation time, they have to set up for the rescue. It may take more air evacuation. It may take more rescue equipment. And then the rescue time itself, and how much time it takes for them to reach the employee being rescued, to treat them and evacuate them from the confined space. There's usually first aid in that along the way too. Let's take some look at the rescue equipment that you might see in confined space rescues. Ropes is the primary tool. You see samples here. Harness. Everybody needs their own harness. Tripods. Every system that has any confined space, such as down a manhole, should have a tripod handy and use it. Winches with the tripod. Ventilation system. Like we talked before, Bind or disconnect, cap all input lines so that no hazardous materials can enter the space. You don't want to be evacuating the space and it being sucked back in there to recontaminate your airspace. Lock out, tag out when entrance covers are removed. You do not want anything to kick on that will jeopardize safety. SCBA units, we'll have some videos on those. Fire departments typically have those. If you're a gas chlorinated system, you should have an SCBA yourself. To wear an SCBA, you should have respirator clearance or physician approval to make sure that you're physically fit for an SCBA. You should make sure that the SCBA fits you. You don't want to have to, when you need to put it on, you don't want to have to adjust it. And you want to make sure that the face mask fits you and that it fits your face and that your face is susceptible to sealing good for an SCBA. Rescue equipment, you can see that there's a lot of different equipment that is needed, and such as the fire department and all that, like we said, they need to be aware of your confined spaces because you want them to be able to have the right equipment if they have to come and rescue you if something goes wrong. Commanding the Confined Space Rescue. If you're part of a rescue team at your facility, you must be familiar with your rescue plan. Here's some key points. Your rescue team will have an incident command supervisor. This is another role that is added along with the entry supervisor, attendant, and entrant. Now we have an incident commander who is actually now in charge. And his responsibilities, or her responsibilities, whichever it may be, their priorities are safety, their safety of the victim. They assess the situation and they determine the type of rescue development. They develop the rescue plan, general public control, and safety. Keep in mind, 60% of fatalities are would-be rescuers. You have to keep that in mind so that doesn't become you. Assessment of the situation, confined space. The responder has the safety. They have to determine what PPE they need, obtain air monitoring samples, assess hazards, characteristics of the space they're going into. And they have to assess the hazard mitigation, how to avoid the hazard there themselves, how to remove the hazard that overcame the entrant, how to control that hazard, and how to use the PE equipment. Safety of the victim. They have to assess, is the victim conscious or is the victim unconscious? Will medical attention be required? Will medical personnel need to be notified? Typically, medical personnel will show up right with or after the rescue team. Typically, they're called at the same time, and you'd hope that they are because they need to be there when the victim is evacuated. What type of rescue equipment we require to safely remove the victim? And there's a timeline associated with the rescue because of the condition of the victim. Yes. They have to assess the situation. They have to look at the atmosphere there, the energy sources, entrapment, fall, hazard, fire explosion, hazardous material, the risks associated with the rescue, length of time to implement any hazard controls for their safety's sake, distance required for the issue, rescue problem within capabilities of the department team. Types of rescue. There's two types of rescue. There's offensive and defensive. Offensive is a rescue. Defense is a recovery. Development of the rescue plan. They take into consideration the survival time of the victim and the confined space characteristics. They assign roles. Make sure they have sufficient personnel to carry it out and equipment needed, and the communication, because they have to communicate with each other also. Development of a rescue plan. They have to ventilate the space and monitor the space just like you should have been as your confined space entry was happening. Air supply for rescuers if required. Control of all sources of energy and engulfment hazards, lockout, tag out, and blocking, different things like that have to be taken into consideration of a rescue plan. The longer it takes, the more hazards they are. Developing the rescue plan. The rigging, they'll need to figure out what rigging they need. Slings, a basket, rope, stabilizers, winches, and such, as shown in this picture here as they're practicing. General public control and safety. Perimeter control, depend on type of situation. We spoke before, you may need the police to barricade off the area to keep onlookers out, control traffic, limiting access to rescue area to assigned personnel. If they don't need to be there, they don't need to be there. Rapid intervention team provides safety backup, dressed in the same PPE as entry, ready to go, cannot be assigned to another task during the rescue. After the rescue, always debrief, resupply everything, document. If there's fatality, you want to document everything in detail. Post-incident analysis is critical in these situations. Failure can be listed as failure to understand the environment, additional medical issues not considered. It could be on down the road, inadequate rescue skills, lack of teamwork or training, understanding logistics instrument, rescue versus recovery mode not considered, equipment not mastered. All of those are pieces of failure. Now, what do you need to do when you get back to your facility? If you're part of the rescue team, go to the doctor and get checked out. Get cleared to wear an SCBA again. Get fat tested, know your rescue plan. Become familiar with the equipment for confined space entry. Know the hazards associated. Practice, practice, practice. Retrain when new confined spaces are added and when something regarding an existing confined space changes. You can be part of the next rescue team if you're willing and trained for it. Your buddy's life, you may be the one that saves them. Conclusion. Entry supervisor needs to ensure the confined space operations conform to the permit. The entry supervisor should remove unauthorized personnel from the area and keep them from entering the space. The entry supervisor terminates and cancels the permit at the right time. Make sure each hazard is identified and controlling before entering confined space. Document it. Fully understand the requirements for confined space rescue. It's one reason that we're showing this video, so you have an idea of what is involved by the rescuers when they show up on scene. Always report any concerns that you have regarding confined spaces. Emergency rescue should only be made by trained personnel or a rescue service.